Hi everyone, today I want to show you how to make the beanie that's gone viral on TikTok recently. When I was learning to make these, I couldn't find a tutorial that gave me all of the bits and bobs that I was going to need to make it, so I figured I'd do a tutorial here and hopefully it'll help anyone else who's trying to learn. So to make one of these beanies, you are going to need some Red Heart Super Saver in the shade Retro Stripes. This is quite tough to come by in the UK. I bought this from Amazon because you can't actually buy it direct from any of the UK yarn websites. You can buy it from some American websites too, but it just takes longer to get to you. So you'll need one skein of Red Heart Super Saver stripes in the shade Retro Stripes. And then in the UK, I've discovered that Stylecraft Special Aran in the shade Aspen and the shade Fondant are pretty decent matches for the darkest blue and the pink of the Super Saver, because the Super Saver is not the softest yarn in the world, so I like to line mine with another colour, and so I have found that these two shades are the best shades to colour match the Red Heart Retro Stripes, and they're also a lot softer, so the bit that goes on your head feels a bit softer. You'll also need a faux fur pom-pom like this in a rainbow colour. This one's from Two Little Rainbows on Etsy. Heaven Hooked Crochet also does them too. A pair of embroidery scissors, a darning needle, and of course you're going to need either a 46 pin Addy Express king size or a 48 pin Centro circular knitting machine. Anything smaller than those two and you're going to get a baby beanie, you're not going to get an adult beanie. So without further ado, let's get going. Okay, so the key to making this beanie, to make sure that you get the full gradient rainbow, is you either need to start your beanie on the darkest blue or the bubblegum pink. These two colours have double the length of colour than all of the other colours in the skein. So when you've worked a beanie, you need to work from the halfway through the blue. So I've already made one, so I'm halfway through the blue, and then I will work to halfway through the pink. Depending on your tension, for me it's about 45 to 50 rows. I know that some people are getting more rows out of it. I know that Katie Dids on TikTok gets 55 rows. I don't know how, her tension must be just tighter than mine, but I've found that if I do the rainbow, I get about 45 to 50 rows. Then my entire beanie length I do for the retro stripe is 102 rows. Again, with other people's tension, it can go anything up to 115, but for the beanie size I like, which gives me about a 10-inch long beanie, 26-27 centimeters, I need 102 rows. So you start with the darkest blue, and you can count rows if you want, but you just need to keep an eye that you are going to head for this pink here, and when you get to this pink you want to work about half of it if you're wanting to get another beanie out of your skein. If you work all of the pink, then you're going to be stuck if you want to make another one, because you're not going to have enough pink for your next beanie. So what you want to do is you want to leave a short tail and then work the basic cast on. You are weaving in and out of the needles, so make sure that your first needle grabs the yarn, and then you are going in front and behind, in front, behind, and make sure that those needles are pulling the yarn down inside. You don't want your tension to be too tight, but because otherwise you run the risk of it just being too tight when you do your first round. So you work forward and back all the way around, in front and behind, and when you get to your last white pin on the Addy, because you have 3 black pins at the beginning of the round, you should be behind. If you're not behind, you've gone wrong. You need to go back and take a look. When you have worked your way around, you need to attach your yarn to your tensioner. I don't have a Centro machine. They do have a separate tensioner to tension the yarn that sits down here. I hand tension my yarn, so I hold it steady but not too tight. If you hear your machine clicking, then your tension is too tight and you need to ease off a little bit. So what you're going to do now is you are going to knit in the round until you get to the middle of that bubblegum pink section. Again, I said for me it's about 45-50 rows. It depends on the skein of yarn, but you just need to practice. I practiced and ripped back about 5 beanies before I worked out the right tension and the right row count. So 0 your counter, because I don't count the cast on as the first row, and then you're going to knit until you get to your pink. So I'll speed up this section and then I will meet you back just as we're getting to the end of the pink. So I'm just hitting the last pink. The way I've been working things out when I'm working is I look at the skein just as the pink starts. If you keep a close eye, you can see where the colour starts to change. So here I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 17 rows of the darker pink. So what I've been doing is taking 8 off the skein and cutting my yarn. For my mind, it works better that I'm not going to overshoot, because as I said previously, this yarn is so tough to get hold of. I'm trying to get as much out of every skein as I can. So you can do that, you can work by eye, but for me, I just, in this case, I will take 9, just over 8 of these lines off the skein, cut the yarn and then carry on working so that I don't overshoot. Normally I'd change colour on the beginning of a round. I've got this much yarn left, I don't have enough to go all the way around, but in this beanie, because I'm matching with pink and it's going to go on the inside, I'm not so worried because I can make the back where it changes. I can just make it the back. So I'm not going to change yarn colour at the beginning of the round because I want to get the most out of this yarn as I can. So when you change colour, you take the yarn out of the guide and just drop it to the left hand side of the last needle that you want to have the colour. And then you're going to add in your liner colour. Some people use white, that's fine too. I don't get enough of the outside colour to risk using white because I don't want it to show. At least if a tiny bit of the pink shows, it's not the end of the world because it's almost colour matched, and actually it's a slightly darker pink, so it just looks like the gradient's continuing on. So to attach your new colour, you just drop a tail of yarn to the right of the pin, the first pin that you're going to work with, close your door and then carry on. Just make sure that you tug these two ends tight and make sure that the pins have pulled not only the last stitch of the old colour but the first stitch of the new colour. And then I managed to get just over 47 rounds of the retro stripe, so now I'm going to carry on with the contrasting colour up to 102 rows for this particular beanie, because I find that I get a little bit more length out of retro than I would the Stylecraft. It's worsted weight as opposed to Aran weight, so it just, the stitches work up a little bit different. So off we go, and I will join you back at 102 rows and show you how to cast off. Just quickly, once I've done a few rows of the new colour, I take the ends and I tie them in a little knot. We'll come back and fix them and sort them permanently at the end once we've done the hat, but for now it just keeps them tidy and keeps them from dangling too much in my way. When your work is almost touching the table surface that you're working on, what you can do is you can just lift it up, make it into a little donut, and it just keeps it from pressing down on the table and lifting your stitches up too much. Stops you from, reduces your chances of drop stitches. Okay, so we're on the last round now. I'll take that one a little bit slower just so I don't overshoot the pin. If you've got an Addy, I think the Centro does too, then it has actually has the stitch numbers on the ring on the outside of the stitches, so you can actually carry on and count. And you can see this is pin 46, pin 1 is black. So now we need to cut our yarn because we're ready to cast off. You want a decent tail so that you've got enough room, enough yarn to pick up your stitches. What you can do is you can run the yarn roughly around the outside of your machine, and that should give you enough tail to work with. Then what you want to do is you want to cut your end, get rid of your yarn, and then you need a darning needle. So what you want to do is you want to remove your yarn from the holder and close it. Then you just want to turn until the last white pin picks up that last stitch so that you've knitted it properly. Then thread your yarn onto your needle, and what you want to do one by one is you want to turn the handle slowly, and as each pin drops down like that one, you want to pop your needle in underneath that stitch and pull the yarn through it, and it will come off the red hooks. And you want to slowly work your way around, picking up each stitch as you go. Once you've done this a few times, you can drop more stitches into the machine and pick up, you know, 2 or 3 in one go. But when I tried that first time, I dropped a whole load of stitches and basically had to redo the whole hat. So I prefer to take it slowly and take one stitch off at a time. And it's as simple as that. You pick your stitches up and you work all the way around until you get to the beginning of the round. So if you want to carry on and do that, I will meet you back at the beginning to show you how to finalise the hat, cinch closed, and add your pom-pom. There, so that's the last stitch just come off the machine now. Pull your yarn through. You can remove the machine, or drop your yarn into the middle. So this next part is where the magic happens. You give your work a tug and it stretches out all the stitches to make a nice long tube. And what you need to do is you need to grab your end that you've just sewed in and pull to tighten it up. Not all the way, just enough, just to even out those stitches on that cast on off yarn. And do the same with the other end. So I like my beanies to be about 26 centimetres from top to brim, or 27. So I aim for between 26 and 27. So what I aim to have is a tube that is between 52 and 54 centimetres long. That's coming up at 55. I'm happy with that because the retro can sometimes work up a little small. The next stage is to sort out the end where you joined your yarn. I don't know if you can see. Here's where I joined the yarn, and it's just a tiny bit loose at the minute. So I'm going to grab the work and turn it inside out. I'm going to find where those ends are, and I'm just going to tighten up the knot that I did. Not too tight, but just tight enough so it pulls the stitches in tight. And then I'm going to do a couple more knots. Now the beauty of using a double thickness beanie is that you don't have to sew in the ends. If you're doing a decent amount of knots, leave some little tails to stop the knot coming undone, and that is your ends sorted. And this beanie is great because it only has the one set of ends because we haven't changed colours multiple times. What you need to then do pull your work back the correct way round. You might need to redo your cinch because it's come undone because we sorted those ends. Now when I sew my beanie together, I like to put the right side of the work, in this case the variegated part, on the inside of the beanie. So we're pulling the beanie, folding it double basically. You're going to want to play with it a little bit to make sure that it's all even, that you've not got any ruffles or it's not twisting all the way around inside. And then what you want to do is we've got the end here, that's the end we're going to use to sew together, and you want to match the other end together. So you want to marry them up together so that you can start sewing in. This is the neatest cinch method I have found. Some people like to cinch both ends separately and then essentially sew them together to each other after. This for me is my favourite method because I feel like it gives the neatest edge. So with the yarn from the outside part of your beanie, you want to find the first stitch, it's normally really loose, of the inside part of the beanie. You're going to put your needle under it and you're going to pull through. And then basically this process, you're going to sandwich all the way around between pink and blue. And they're the stitches that are running on the cast on and cast off yarn. They look like little loops hanging off of the thread. So once you're used to spotting them, they're fairly easy to find. The only thing that I'd say to be careful is make sure you're not grabbing any of this part of the yarn with your needle, because when you go to cinch your beanie tight, what can happen is, it's happened to me, the yarn can get snagged and then it won't tighten correctly, or it will snap, and then you've basically got a beanie that you have to start all over again because your yarn that's basically holding all your stitches together has snapped, and once they're cinched tight, you can't really get them undone again. You can already see how nice this edge is starting to look. So you're basically sandwiching one stitch over another, basically zipping them together, ready for when we cinch it closed. These last few stitches can sometimes be a bit tight because of the way the yarn's being pulled tight as you've worked. but once you've worked your way around, it's generally fairly easy to spot where they are. The loops are in the stitches that are looping upwards, not downwards. So here, this one's hiding, but if I give it a tug, there it appears. Again, when I'm putting these stitches up, I'm trying my absolute best not to catch the pink yarn that's already running through the stitches, because that again can make it difficult to cinch. So we're just on our last stitch now. There, so we've gone all the way around with our beanie. So you can take your needle off for now. Couple of pointers. The turquoise yarn, or the inside yarn, is only going through once because it's only your cast on edge. The pink yarn that we've got is going round twice. So the pink yarn is going to be the more difficult yarn to cinch, purely because it's going through the hat twice. If you're going to make a mess of it, I can guarantee it'll be with the pink yarn. So the trick is to go slowly, to keep checking, to keep jiggling, and you should get there. So what I always do first is I pull a little bit on the inner yarn, and when you pull, don't be afraid of pulling it back out to adjust it, because it will get stuck in places. It always snags. So once you've pulled the inner yarn a bit, you can start tightening the pink yarn. What I would say is take it slow, and again move your stitches around as you're tightening, because what often happens is the pink yarn tightens round once and you end up with saggy pockets of yarn from the first round, the cast off round. So by doing this, you can look for places where the yarn hasn't yet tightened, and by moving it in and out, you lessen the risk of snapping the yarn. So you want to take a look in the folds that appear, because if you're going to get a piece of yarn that's tucked and peeping, it's going to be here. What you also want to do as you're cinching is you want to take a look on this side to make sure that none of your turquoise yarn is hiding, because sometimes you can get a loop appear here, and when you've all tied it off and you turn your hat the right way around and you've got a loop, it's really annoying. It's happened to me. So this one's tightening up quite nicely now. You're always going to get a small hole in the middle. You can get it relatively small, and because I put pom-poms on all of mine, the pom-pom hides the hole on the outside. The hole actually makes the pom-pom easier to fit, and the button for the pom-pom hides the hole on the inside. So this is looking pretty nice now, and if we look at this side, you can see that's looking really pretty too. Get a nice shape with these beanies. So that what you can do then, once you're happy with how tight it is, give it a last pull. Trim your ends, and then you're just going to tie a couple of nice knots. I do 3 or 4. Again, this is hidden underneath the pom-pom button, and this is knotting it is almost more secure than sewing in the ends. And then you trim your ends right close to the knot, and there you have a finished beanie. Don't worry about the flare out here. I'll show you how I sort that in a minute once the pom-pom is on. To attach the pom-poms I buy come with a little button to attach them, which is really cute because it saves me having to try to find a button. But if your pom-poms don't come with a button, you can just buy any 2.5–3 centimetre button and use those. That's fine, as long as it's a button that you can fit the strings through. It doesn't matter. So to sew the pom-pom on, I get my 2 strings onto the needle at the same time, thread it through the hole in the middle and turn your hat inside out like that. Then what you want to do is you want to thread your needle with 1 string at a time and thread it through the button. It's really super easy, and what this method means is that if your beanie needs spot cleaning or hand washing, you can take the pom-pom off, because faux fur really doesn't like being washed. It just goes a bit sad and a bit droopy. So if you can keep your pom-pom fluffy and nice, then it always makes for a better beanie. Right, so I do a double bow because I think if I do a knotted bow, I could imagine it will be harder for people to get it undone. There, so there we have one finished beanie. And the top tip, if it flares out like this, you want to grab it by the pom-pom and fling it down. It's difficult to do it in camera, but you just want to give it, almost fling it against itself, and the stitches all even out really nicely. And there we have it, one TikTok beanie from start to finish. And if you really want to give it a nice little edge, you can add, lots of people add holographic tags, but I've got little grey rivet tags that have my, well, it's not my business name, I sell these as Snufflebeanies, and you can buy these. This was from a company called Cup Design on Etsy, and basically what they are little tags with screw-in rivets. So when I make baby hats, I don't put these on because I consider them a choking risk. So I only put them on adult hats, and they're super easy to attach. You just find a stitch on your beanie that you're happy with the placement, poke it through to the other side, pop that rivet through, and it screws shut. And all things being equal, this beanie should be 26 centimetres from top to bottom. I would warn you that if you get one of these machines, they are addictive. So I can't be held responsible if you end up making a ton of beanies like me. So if you like this video, please give it a like. If you'd like to see something else from me, then please let me know. And if not, I'll hopefully be back for another tutorial really soon. Bye!